Since the dawn of the 21st century, scientific discovery has rushed forward at lightning speed. Genetics, physics, computerized technology, robotics, virtual reality. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert as they uncover the truths behind this ultimate scientific deception. Welcome to SciFriday.
Welcome to SciFriday. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to our little home.
Oh, I almost forgot to say... Okay, now we can forget the science.
You forget
thing.
the science part. How can anybody know it's SciFriday if you don't say the word?
We take a couple days off, and I need to be completely retrained.
We just got back from a wonderful conference in Colorado Springs, and it snowed. That's science.
Well, it is. It's odd that in May, middle of May, we arrived one day, it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The next day, we had 12 inches of snow in Colorado Springs. But we're told by friends who live there that this is not completely unheard of.
Actually, many of them said they had never in 20 years experienced it. So I guess it depended on who you asked.
Well,
but it was different. We weren't able to go outside, of course, beautiful area, but we were stuck inside, which was not bad at all because we met many of you. And many of you told us you were excited that SciFriday is back.
And we're delighted for that because this is really a labor of love for us. So we thank you for joining us on this venture. Please take advantage of the free app that we now have available. You'll find it at scifriday.tv/app. Also at our main website, which is gilberthouse.org/app. It's iOS, Android, even Amazon Kindle Fire devices. And of course, we also have a Roku channel now. And you'll find the links there at scifriday.tv or at gilberthouse.org. Just look in the top menu bar. Add us to your set-top box, and you'll get all of our video content.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I like it when you go to gilberthouse.org, because everything we do is right there.
Yep.
And that even includes our store, which we'll tell you more about after the break. But today we are going to talk about something many of you have asked me to discuss. And by the time you watch this, it's entirely possible that you have also done research and you know just as much, maybe more, about monkeypox as I.
Yeah, monkeypox sounds like something that's really frightening because most of us...
Remember
if
smallpox.
Of a certain age, remember smallpox and how smallpox was declared eradicated about 30 years ago after a global vaccination campaign. What's the difference between the DNA of a virus like the pox viruses, cowpox, smallpox, monkeypox, chickenpox, and say SARS-2?
You just had to ask me that question because I haven't looked that one up, but I can tell you they're all part of the orthopox family, which is part of the Poxviridae family. And essentially, they have probably different genes amongst them. They present in very familiar ways. In fact, monkeypox does some of the things that smallpox does, which I'll tell you about in a minute.
But they're a two-stranded DNA virus as opposed to an RNA virus. So what's the difference between a DNA virus and an RNA virus?
Well, an RNA virus is made of ribonucleic acid. Deoxyribonucleic acid is DNA. In other words, it's missing an oxygen at one end. Got that? So it has one oxygen less than ribonucleic acid. Ribonucleic acid is one of the backbones for ribosomes. They are the little molecular machines that translate the DNA, the messenger RNA, into a protein.
And as we discussed on SciFriday back in the spring of 2020, as you were one of the first to spot this strange emerging disease coming out of China that the rest of the world very quickly began hearing about, you pointed out that RNA viruses, because of the difference in the way they replicate and the way DNA is replicated, is copied and transcribed, that RNA viruses don't copy perfectly and they mutate rapidly.
Very, very rapidly, and depending upon the RNA virus, they mutate even more rapidly. In the case of pox viruses, like monkeypox, smallpox, chickenpox, they do mutate, but not as quickly. An interesting thing about monkeypox, which I'll tell you in a minute, because first I want to explain it's not from monkeys. The first discovery in our country of monkeypox happened in 1970 or so, when a group of crab-eating macaque monkeys, actually it may not have happened in the United States, it may have been in another country. Forgive me, don't have that in front of me. And my memory is, I haven't had lunch yet, so my memory is fading. But 1970 or so, it was discovered in these monkeys because they all became ill. And these were monkeys in a lab that were imported from another country. As they became ill, it was their blood was examined, their various fluids were examined, and it was discovered that this was a pox-like virus, but was different from smallpox or chickenpox or camelpox. Yes, there's a camelpox. So it was named monkeypox because that was this first animal in which it was discovered, just like chickens aren't the reservoir for chickenpox. It was the first animal in which it was discovered. Cowpox, similar to smallpox, and many of you already know, cowpox was how Jenner realized that he could vaccinate someone against smallpox because the milkmaids weren't getting smallpox. And if they did, they were
been exposed.
Barely ill. Exactly.
Right, okay. So the thing that allowed that aspect of these double-stranded, these DNA-based viruses, the fact that they don't mutate very quickly, is what allowed a vaccination campaign to successfully practically eradicate smallpox.
For over a century, it's been used. Now it's the vaccinia virus, which is an attenuated form of, I think, of smallpox. Or it could be, or actually it may be a wild virus. Again, don't have that in front of me, need lunch. But vaccinia is still used today. In fact, the vaccine that is out there is based on vaccinia. And many countries have been shelling out money to get it from, I think it's a Norwegian company that now makes it and was approved for use in cases of monkeypox.
So that is one of the fundamental differences between the DNA and RNA viruses. But monkeypox does not transmit human to human very easily.
No, in fact, it has been very difficult to transfer from even animals to human. In the past, you had to be scratched, bitten, or eat bushmeat.
Okay.
So in 2003, there was an outbreak here in the United States. And it was finally, and there weren't that many cases, maybe a dozen, but it was discovered because it was in multi-states that it was families who had purchased a ferret or I think guinea pig. There were rodents that were imported from another country, and they had been around a sick animal. And because of that, when every child gets scratched or bitten by its pet, let's face it. And sadly, there were cases, no deaths. There were cases of monkeypox as it was diagnosed through PCR here in the United States. Again, very, very unusual for it to have an outbreak outside of West Africa or Central Africa. By the way, there are two types of monkeypox, the West African strain and the Central African strain, or Congo strain. Congo strain is much more deadly. 10% die. West African, 1% die.
And this strain is, and that's why this is so
West
unusual.
African.
Yeah, thankfully. But that's why it's
very,
so unusual.
very few people are going to die from this, assuming you even get it. And the way it's being spun, that it's passed from human to human, isn't the ordinary way that we all caught smallpox. Smallpox is extremely easy to catch.
Right.
It is airborne. I could sneeze on the third floor of a hospital and infect someone walking down on the street if the windows were open.
So we need to be aware then that when we see all these stories popping up in the news about monkeypox, there is very little relationship to the horrors of smallpox and why such an effort was made over the last century to try to wipe it out.
Well, it seems from the current news, and again, by the time you're watching this, it's very likely that this is old news. And you're sitting there going, well, I know that. But we are recording this on, what's today, the 25th
of May.
Yeah. So probably several weeks before you're watching this. It appears that the cases right now, which are primarily in men, originated in 2 separate raves in 2 separate locations.
Big dance parties.
Big dance parties. And it does appear to have passed from male to male.
Yeah,
if that gives you an idea of what you're talking about. Kids, close your ears.
The World Health Organization is being very delicate in the way they present it, and really there's no need to sensationalize this. It doesn't spread easily human to human, but it can spread through prolonged face-to-face contact,
Yes.
which is, again, a gentle way of describing what's going on here. This is predominantly in men. There are those who are being very vocal in saying that this is not a disease that predominantly infects same-sex people with the same-sex attraction. But the truth is that these 2 raves were predominantly attended by men with a same-sex attraction.
Well, no, it is not a disease that predominantly goes from same-sex couples.
Right.
However, thus far, that's how it has begun.
Right.
But
Right.
if you are bisexual, again, kids, close your ears, and you have a wife or a girlfriend,
right.
if you kiss her or make love to her, it's entirely possible that you, if you are ill, and that the incubation period is anywhere up to 21 days.
Right. So if you've been exposed, it's going to be a while before you start seeing those
Before you
signs.
know it, you may start
Yeah.
to feel a little achy, but it's usually day 3 of the fever that you first start to break out in the rash.
Yeah. So that is why they are warning. There are warnings that have been directed at gay men and bisexual men, saying, look, if you've been with a partner in the last few weeks and you notice any kind of a strange rash, see your doctor. But thankfully, again, monkeypox is not typically fatal. It's a milder form of the pox virus than what people who are infected with smallpox would experience. So the need for a massive vaccination campaign against monkeypox is probably not warranted.
Now, I don't see the need for that at this point. Again, you're probably watching this a few weeks after we record it. So a lot can change in this very quickly evolving story. Right now, first-degree contacts of patients are being isolated for up to 21 days. In fact, I think most countries are saying 21 days or more. Secondary contacts, those who were with the first person and have been around other people, the secondary contacts are told to stay at home and monitor themselves for fever and report a couple of times a day to their doctors. Tertiary, I don't really know if anyone's doing anything with that right now, but what generally happens, and happened with smallpox, was that these individuals are all vaccinated. It's called ring vaccination. And once you take care of them, then you can put out the fire, if you want to put it that way.
And the other thing to note is that this is a type of vaccine that is a long track record and a well-established safety profile, so that we know that this is effective. That's why we have so few cases of smallpox worldwide, if any, these days, because A, the virus doesn't mutate quickly, giving the vaccine a stable target, a steady target to hit. Secondly, it is a very old type of vaccine, which, again, doctors know the safety profile.
Well, the other thing that I saw this morning is that thus far, it appears to be infecting only those who are young enough not to have received the vaccine that you and I got. And so there are now calls in Parliament and perhaps even Congress and other government bodies that perhaps we should go back to vaccinating children. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but there are at least 2 generations that weren't vaccinated.
Another idea, we could have kids send them out to work on dairy farms.
Well, cowpox doesn't go around dairy farms anymore.
Oh, well, okay. So much for that idea.
Not going to work. Sorry.
Well, let's take a break, but when we come back, we can discuss the claim or the story that came out just before our recording today that this strain is, according to some, hyper-mutated.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean? We'll talk about that when SciFriday continues. Jesus told his followers to love our God with all of our hearts, souls, and minds. And that's what we try to do every week here at Gilbert House Ministries. This program is an outreach of our ministry. Every week, we search through the mysteries of end times prophecy on Unraveling Revelation. We look at the nexus of science and the supernatural on SciFriday. We study the Bible verse by verse in chronological order at the Gilbert House Fellowship. And each week, I interview fascinating guests on my podcast, A View from the Bunker. Producing that much content takes time. Serving up that much audio and video costs money, and so we depend on your support. You can support us in a couple of ways. First, you can donate through our website at gilberthouse.org, or you can contact us through the U.S. mail. Gilbert House Ministries, P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633. And you can shop at our online store, a sort of a virtual book table, where during the month of June, you can save 20% on every one of Sharon's 7 novels in her series of supernatural thrillers, The Red Wing Saga. Just use promo code JUNE20 at checkout. That's JUNE20. We are grateful for your help in fulfilling our mission. We thank you for your prayers and your support. Welcome back to SciFriday. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. I'm going to have some of this lovely tea because...
Thank you for making it.
Oh, you're welcome. We love drinking tea here in the house, so I hope that you're sitting there with your tea or coffee or a favorite beverage and just relaxing, because that's why we invited you into our home. And earlier I said gilberthouse.org is the place to go. If you go there, not only can you download our app and learn how to find us on Roku, you also can shop our store.
It's a virtual book table where everything that we've done, both book form, DVD form, of course our nonfiction books, and even Sharon's fiction series, my 2 novels, we've got them all there at the bookstore. And during the month of June, of course, take advantage of the special savings. June 20 at checkout gets you 20% off on all of the Red Wing Saga novels.
All 7 of the books, and book 8 is coming out very soon. In fact, I was working on that this afternoon, and I told Derek that I almost forgot to start getting dressed for recording because I was writing a scene with Paul. By the way, it takes place in Africa. And I was doing research, and I was just really getting into it, and suddenly I looked up and I went, oh, it's 2 o'clock. And Derek was getting home at 3. You ladies know it takes a little longer than, say, half an hour to get ready.
Yeah, we guys, we've got it pretty easy. Just throw on a clean shirt and a tie, and you're pretty much good to go.
Comb your hair.
Yeah, comb the hair.
Put your glasses on.
That's a good sign, though, when you get so wrapped up in the story that you're telling that you lose track of time. That's a good sign for the readers.
It is indeed. So be sure to go to gilberthouse.org and check out our store. It's pretty easy. There at the top in the menu bar, you'll see shop. It's even on, if you go on the mobile app, on the mobile side, you'll see 3 horizontal lines in the top left. That's what you tap on. It'll bring up the menu.
Yes. And we've also got our television schedule there at gilberthouse.org, so you can see when and where, if you're looking for an over-the-air broadcast, or maybe to share it with your friends who've not heard of SciFriday or Unraveling Revelation. You can point them there, and we're all across the country thanks to the PTL network. So that's at gilberthouse.org. Now, too, a viewer suggested, hey, why don't you put that at the Gilbert House site? Like, oh, yeah, okay. Done.
Great idea.
Done.
Boy, are we silly.
As of this recording, just today, it's being reported out of the UK that Portuguese virologists are saying that there are more mutations in this particular strain of monkeypox than expected. Again, because it mutates slowly, they're saying that this strain that is spreading in the northern hemisphere now is collated an extra 50 mutations, which they write is far more than one would expect considering the estimated substitution rate for orthopox viruses. So that can lead to conspiratorial thinking. How did it mutate more quickly than expected?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. It could be that it went through an intermediate species that caused it to, just mutate for some reason. It could also be that the origination of Case 0 was in someone who had encountered a species yet unencountered, and this is a brand new type of monkeypox. In other words, we have 2, Central African, West African. This may actually be renamed. Yes, we can put our conspiracy hats on and ask, is it possible that someone caused these 50-point mutations? Now,
you've talked before about Ken Alabek, who worked at Vector, which is this old Soviet Union's biowarfare center. And he, after he defected to the United States in the early 90s, after the Soviet Union collapsed, reported that monkeypox was one of the potential vectors considered by the Soviets as a bioweapon.
The Soviets wanted, according to Alabek, and again, I highly recommend reading his book, Biohazard. Very, very good book. He said that the Soviets wanted to weaponize smallpox. Again, it spreads very easily. So if they could make it even more deadly, or even combine it with another disease, one of the possibilities was Ebola or something terrible, that they could release it and, run away. So instead of working on smallpox, which was extremely dangerous, they chose to work on monkeypox because it was similar. If they could weaponize monkeypox, Alabek wrote, and I'm not quoting, but this is essentially what he wrote, then they believed that they could take the same method and weaponize smallpox. So we do know that in the 1980s, the Russians were working on monkeypox and were trying to weaponize it. When the Soviet Union, or 70s and 80s, when the Soviet Union collapsed after the wall came down and Gorbachev, was out there.
Tore down this wall.
Yeah, well, he tore down that wall. Everything went to pot. Let's just put it that way. Some people abandoned their posts. Some places were just shut down. Some had no refrigeration. Some were denied. There were some programs that I don't think Alabek even wrote about because he didn't know about them. There was a lot of discretion, and by that I mean compartmentalization amongst the various scientists. But he wrote himself that he believes that there was evidence to show that some of those diseases were stolen by, well, let's just say, those who would do us harm.
The program, the smallpox program, from what I read yesterday, was abandoned when smallpox was more or less eradicated because enough of us had been vaccinated to create a sort of a shield wall of immunity against the virus.
That's what Russia said.
Yeah, but
we said
again,
something similar.
But we still have
still have samples of smallpox.
Right.
For decades, there have been calls for both sides to eradicate the samples that they keep. But there is value in keeping some of those samples because then you can compare that parent to whatever descendant comes along. You can also, theoretically, prepare for a possible weaponization of that very virus. Now, we've all talked about what may or may not have happened in Wuhan. We are told if something did happen in a lab, it was because scientists were trying to prepare for a weaponization or some future drastic mutation of a coronavirus.
You'd like to think that they had our best interests at mind, and just somebody made a mistake.
I worked with a lot of scientists, good-hearted people. Now, many of them didn't have a Christian worldview, but they were still altruistic, good-hearted people and shuddered at the thought of the government doing anything like that. So I want to believe that most scientists really are honest, hardworking, great folks who aren't out to do us harm. But if you work for someone who pays your salary, sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do.
Yeah, and there are clearly programs about which we know nothing, funded off the books by governments all across the world.
Well, that's why you get a $10,000 hammer.
Yeah, exactly. We know that there are programs that have been going on here in the United States. We've heard reports that there were Department of Defense allocations for research in Ukraine, and some speculation that perhaps this was part of what was going on when Russia decided to invade, that it was to shut down those programs. I would feel more inclined to believe that if Russia was also shutting down its ongoing research and that we were shutting down our ongoing research.
I do know that I think it's in the 2000s, that Alabek went to Ukraine to help them with something. Why, I don't know. But at the time, he was panned by the Western press because to them it appeared that he was returning to his former family.
Well, again, we don't know what's going on there. We don't know what he's up to these days. His information about the Soviet program back up to 1991 was really eye-opening. But again, we know from books like Hot Zone that similar work is done here in the United States.
It is.
So it is sad, but that's what you get when you get a fallen humanity. We constantly look for ways to weaponize anything we can get our hands on to try to get an advantage over our enemies. And that's tragic. God has given us these minds which scientists, artificial intelligence researchers struggle to replicate. They cannot recreate the human mind, the human brain in a laboratory, and yet we choose to use the mind as a weapon to try to create ways to kill other people who have been created in God's image just as we have been. And
yes, indeed.
That is the horror of all of this.
Isn't it, though? And one of these days, one of those artificial intelligence algorithms, if indeed it is habitable by a spirit, may just turn on us.
I would argue, well, yes, we've talked about this before.
We've talked about it
on
many
our program,
times.
Unraveling Revelation, we've discussed that. The human body, the human brain, is a bioelectrical device, and it can be overwhelmed and possessed by an external entity. Why not a computer? Why not a supercomputer? An artificial intelligence of sufficient power that it could appear to be virtually godlike. Well,
boy. That's
we get into all
dangerous.
kinds of speculation. But God created us all with free will. And when we see things like this happening, we look at some of the awful things that we humans do to one another around the world and ask the question, why would a loving God allow something so awful to happen? It's because he loves us enough to create us with free will, which is just an incredible gift. He did not create us to be mindless automatons, incapable of doing anything but slavishly following his every command and loving him. We choose to love. We choose to reject. And many of us in the natural realm and in the supernatural realm, the spirit realm, have chosen to reject his love and authority. And hence, we see the world in the state that it's in today.
That is the tragedy.
But, well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we've talked about monkeypox this week. Next week, we're going to talk turkey.
Oh, yes. Turkey and Israel. Yes, we talk about archaeology, our love for it, and some of the exciting new discoveries, and what we're going to see when we head to that part of the world this fall and next spring, and, of course, how you can join us in these adventures. What archaeologists are finding in those lands is absolutely incredible, and no surprise to you if you're watching this program, supports the narrative recorded in the Bible.
It does. It does.
So
that's science.
Absolutely. Helping us to better understand God's amazing creation and his plan for our salvation. Thank you for watching. This is SciFriday.
SciFriday is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.